The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day. I am Tara Palacios, and on behalf of Arlington, I am honored to bring you our very first webinar on transit as a streetcar lunch and learn. We are very grateful that you are here with us during the lunch hour, and we're looking forward to interacting with you at the end of the presentation. We've had a great response from people interested in this topic, and we hope to be able to do more of these types of webinars in the future. So as we go along, just a few logistics for today. Just so you know, all attendees will be placed in listen-only mode. If you have a question as we go throughout the webinar, feel free to type it in the chat window. And these questions will be moderated at the end by Arlington's own Jennifer K. Smith. I'll be introducing her when we take Q&A. And just so you know that this session will be recorded today, and we will have it available on the Streetcar website by the end of this week. And today's presenters, we are grateful to have two subject matter experts on Arlington Streetcar, County Board Chairman Jay Fassett, as well as Dennis Leach, who is our Director of Transportation for Arlington County. And with that said, let's jump into our lunch and learn on the streetcar.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, this is Jay. I want to speak 1 minute or so just as a little backdrop to the first slide even here. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, as Tara has already done. I think I'd like to start by saying that I believe that, having been on the board a while now, that a good portion of our success is related to four things that we've done well over many years, and they'll be reflected in this presentation today. One is that we have a vision and a long-term, and we think long-term, not just about tomorrow. Secondly, that we engage the public, and this is an example of that. We do many different things to engage the public, take advantage of the insights and talents in our community, and work toward a consensus, not unanimity, but a consensus. Third, we create partnerships, and we leverage funds and partners to accomplish our vision. And finally, we actually follow through. We take some pride in actually not just putting a plan on the shelf, but developing the tools and implementing and making the strategic investments to actually make something happen. The streetcar, in fact, is a project that's been underway and discussed for close to 15 years in Arlington. It started with the planning of the Columbia Pike corridor, a deteriorated corridor, and one that needed attention. It had not gotten the attention like the Roslyn-Ballston corridor or Crystal City, in fact, had for a long time. The folks along Columbia Pike were very ready, and we spent many years from 1999 through 2000 plus holding charrettes, engaging the community, having consultants in, and working on what the vision for that corridor was going to be. This first slide is, in fact, a reflection of the results of that planning process. What Arlington is so good at doing is integrating land use and transportation, not building more than we can, not building to the degree that we have so many people we can't move them, and ensuring that we have the transportation system and network that will allow us to move the number of people that we're projecting. As you can see, with the currently adopted land use plans in Arlington County, 65% of our county's population growth will occur along the proposed streetcar route, and 44% of those jobs. Our MO, our claim to fame, is smart growth, concentrating development, connecting it to transportation, mixing the uses, and in fact not sprawling out into all other parts of the county, much of which on this map, that lighter green, is single family. So this streetcar was developed as the transit alternative needed to move the number of people we projected along this corridor from Fairfax Skyline, where you see high development now, all the way down past the Pentagon, Pentagon City, Crystal City, and into Potomac Yard, crossing 1 commuter rail line, 2 metro lines, and connecting 2 counties. And the final thing I'll say on this one is that that planning process started looking at all the options. Many people know there is a bump out under the Pentagon that was put there when the system was first created for a potential metro line in a future expansion down Columbia Pike. And that was on the table. Did we all want to do a metro? But it was deemed to be one, too expensive for the density that you would have had to justify that investment. So we ended up with a Main Street feel along Columbia Pike, 6 stories, 8 stories, and it's a streetcar that allows for the movement of that number of people. Dennis, do you want to add something to this?
I'll just add a couple of things. As Jay, you highlighted, it is the integration of our transportation investments with our community land use planning that have led to this community's success over the last 40 years. And the 2 corridors that we're talking about today are really about revitalization, repositioning. Arlington's 2 of our top competitive advantages in the marketplace are really our location in the region. We are very centrally located. But travel choice also ranks up there with our location in terms of our ability to attract residents and workers and quality services. And in these 2 corridors, we have to expand those travel choices for these new residents and workers. In the case of Crystal City, the impacts of the base realignment act affected that very important community adversely. The streetcar investment is really adding another layer to our transportation system to revitalize Crystal City. In Columbia Pike, a more auto-oriented corridor with aging housing stock, it really is about expanding travel choice, making a more walkable and transit-friendly corridor, working in partnership with our colleagues in Fairfax County.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. This just really outlines the route. It is there is some confusion when we talk about Columbia Pike Streetcar and Crystal City Streetcar. This is a seamless 7.4-mile route. 3 stops in Fairfax, as I said earlier, down Columbia Pike, connecting with 2 metro stations. There are 2 funding plans for the 2 stretches of Columbia Pike, and then the second in Crystal City, the 2 segments, but it is 1 line. And as you can see, some raise the alternative of buses. We have a very robust bus system along Columbia Pike now. This is the most heavily traveled corridor in the Commonwealth of Virginia without rail. And as you can see from the left, a streetcar vehicle, which is much more comfortable, many more access points for onloading and offloading quickly at stops, more accessible, carries far more people than a bus would. So capacity is a part of this. While you will have buses up and down the corridor, and we'll speak to that in a moment, veering off just as you do with the metro line. You know, it is a trunk line. It's the heavy workhorse. But of course, you will have others, a commuter line that may go right into Farragut West downtown, or over an ART bus over to Courthouse or Ballston. The majority of the ridership along this corridor would be carried on the streetcar. Dennis, anything to add to this one?
The only thing I would add is that the county has been working with our partners on expanding transit accessibility in both the Columbia Pike as well as the Jefferson Davis or Route 1 corridor. We have been year in, year out expanding bus service, both Metro Bus as well as our very popular ART service. And this proposal is to take those transit investments to the next level. It's not eliminating bus. It's actually building another layer that gives people more travel choice and gives us more capacity. So this is very much a streetcar and bus recommendation for both corridors.
Okay, moving on to the next slide. This is just a framework I like to, after applauding our metro system as the greatest regional success, and can you imagine the region without that rail system? I also know that I've been in other cities where I can get from point A to point B 6 different ways, and that is not the metro system. If you're going from Tysons to Bethesda, you've got to go back into the center and then come out. So what is beginning to take shape is a second layer of rail throughout the region, streetcar and light rail, that will interconnect, create something of a circumferential route, replace or enhance the existing capacity on some of the clogged routes that are heavily used in the system, and begin to further interconnect and create a web of heavy rail, light rail, streetcar that can further make the region more effective and reduce congestion. So you have the Purple Line that we've all heard about in Maryland on the books, in D.C. They're about ready to open one small segment of a much larger planned streetcar system in the District of Columbia. And of course, our system, Fairfax and Arlington. To me, it is heavy rail is very, very expensive and difficult. This provides a much more cost-effective alternative of heavy rail and of rail investment that also has many other benefits of interconnecting the system, filling in some of the corridors, connecting the to the heavy rail in many places throughout the region. Dennis, did you want to add anything to this one?
What you see from this map is that Columbia Pike really is a gap. It is our highest density corridor in Arlington without rail. And Jay, as you mentioned earlier, Bailey's Crossroads was actually planned for a Metro Rail station. So all of the density that's in Bailey's Crossroads, Skyline, anticipated high capacity rail service that was never forthcoming. And so this proposal is really filling in the gaps. And it really is the same strategy that the district is looking at for its streetcar program, and Maryland with its program to connect places like College Park, New Carrollton, Silver Spring, and Bethesda. It's not just about moving people from the suburbs to the core. We have high-density mixed-use districts here in Arlington that need better connectivity.
And the plans, Arlington's plan as adopted, and Fairfax for Skyline and Bailey's area now are built into that plan is the expectation of the streetcar. Okay. Now a little bit about the ridership projections. Based on the adopted land use plans, what is the expected ridership in the entire corridor from one end to the other, Columbia Pike down through Crystal City? Right now there are 24,700 bus rides a day, and the projection is to more than double that. And the percentage of those nearly 60,000 riders daily is that 60% of them will be carried on the workhorse streetcar vehicle. And that is, again, in the adopted plans that cannot be managed and carried with buses alone. Dennis?
The only thing I would add is it takes a lot of work to actually move that number of people on buses today. And I'll just give you the Columbia Pike specific information. Between ART and Metro Bus, we are operating 600 bus trips every weekday to move roughly 18,000 people in that corridor.
That's just the Columbia Pike.
That's just Columbia Pike
of the 24,700.
That's correct. So you're really talking at, probably approaching, 1,000 bus trips a day that are traveling in this 7.4-mile corridor. Again, that's Metro Bus and our local ART system.
All right, and the next one puts us in a little bit of a perspective. Those are numbers, but what does that mean? Well, when we look at the Columbia Pike Crystal City corridor combined, bus ridership today, as you just heard, 24,700. In 2035, we anticipate 22,000, almost the same number of bus riders, but another 37,000 would be carried on the streetcar. And keep in mind, the streetcar history shows more people will in fact choose to ride that rail vehicle than normally will choose to ride the bus. So what you are also doing is incentivizing more people to get out of their car and actually take transit. Some comparisons, just for comparison's sake, Toronto, which is one of the most successful streetcar systems in North America, expanding their system, 31,900 riders on, and we've tried to get some comparable segments. Their 6.7 mile line, 31,900. Metrobus, a very congested corridor in the District of Columbia, 20,000. But if you've ridden that stretch, you know it is not a very friendly bus ride. Portland Streetcar, this is the downtown streetcar, the entire system, 18,500, and that's a comparable length. And then the Cleveland BRT, which is highlighted as really one of the most successful, if not the most, about 16 to 20 for a slightly longer but comparable length. Keep in mind that on Columbia Pike, there is no option for bus rapid transit because by definition you require a good portion, if not the majority of that route, to be in a dedicated lane. And that's just not feasible on Columbia Pike. While I would love to have a dedicated transit lane for streetcar and bus or whatever transit vehicle, it is not possible along Columbia Pike. So you can't compare the streetcar to BRT. You can compare it to an enhanced bus system. Dennis?
What I would add to this is that we look carefully at bus operations. We are one of the funding partners for Metro. I will mention the 16th Street line is particularly instructive for us because it is a corridor with a fair amount of density, transit-dependent households, typically 5 lanes, similar cross-section to many of the places we're looking at, with extensive use of articulated buses, and currently experiencing pretty significant operational problems that it is not highly reliable. And so the district continues to work on different operational fixes, signal timing, striping, parking restrictions to try to get more out of that corridor. You can see our challenge with a future projected ridership that we're going to need to do much more. Instead of 20,000, we will, in this corridor, need to carry close to 60,000 people per day. And so it's what really leads us to the need for major infrastructure investment to make sure that these corridors function well, they're sustainable.
And you know, I consistently come back to personal experience and personal stories from people who use transit. And bus backups at the door, bunching of buses, the vehicle pollution that's created on site, the comfort level, the accessibility, these are all in total significant differences in terms of the vehicles themselves. The comparison between buses with this requirement of ridership and streetcar. Okay, let's go to the next one. A question that I think is very important for us to talk about is the housing affordability and the diversity. Columbia Pike is a very diverse corridor for us. It's a wonderful, rich part of our community. And the question always arises when you make investments, do you drive up the property costs, and does that challenge the housing affordability and the diversity in the future? This particular plan that we worked on over the last years, particularly focused on the residential areas of those wonderful garden apartment complexes, was the first plan that people are aware of in the country, a smart growth plan linking transportation and land use that incorporated a strong commitment to affordable housing in the plan, embedded in the plan, the concept of no net loss, the goal, the requirement of no net loss of affordable housing as part of that. So while density has always been a tool that Arlington has used to generate benefits back to the community, if density is put in the right place, connected to the right transit. We haven't been afraid of it, but we've embraced it cautiously and with the right return to the community. We did the same here. The landowners along Columbia Pike have opportunities now, today. Things will change over time, and the options in front of them are to knock down those garden apartments and create luxury townhouses. By adding some density to this and creating additional people and ridership, we've provided an incentive for those property owners to come in and work with us and protect good portions of those existing garden apartments while still having the ability to reinvest and create some new buildings along Columbia Pike where we'd like them to be. So this was an award-winning plan that incorporated housing as an element of this integrated land use transportation housing plan. And the streetcar is a fundamental element of the incentive for that development to properly occur along this this corridor. This is the Columbia Pike segment of this corridor. And I think it's also important, as the last bullet here speaks to, more and more you are looking at the concept of affordable living. It's affordable housing, major element of your budget, but it's also affordable living. Transportation is the second largest portion of any family budget. And when you have effective transit that allows people to get where they need to go comfortably, you've actually offset some of those higher costs of housing. Again, no net loss of those 6,200 market rate affordable units through the implementation of the plan that we've adopted. Dennis, anything?
I would just say our goal.
You don't have to say something.
Our goal really is to maximize or expand travel choice in these corridors and give our residents, workers, and visitors, the full range of affordable options to travel, whether it be on transit, using our capital bike share system, through walking for short trips, and lowering that transportation household cost actually allowed our residents to afford a little bit more in terms of housing.
Right. I've been surprised when you compare our housing costs, which they're high and they go up because of the value of property in this community for all the good things we've done. We're somewhat victims of our own success. When you compare and calculate transportation and housing, we become much more competitive with some of those outer jurisdictions. Okay, moving on. Now this is a very important part of it too. Outside consultants that are specialists in the economic aspects of transit did an analysis comparing, and this is only for the Columbia Pike segment. They didn't actually take into account the return on investment, which would be significant in Crystal City. But on the Columbia Pike segment, what is the return on investment when comparing the streetcar to the most enhanced bus that you can provide? Again, I said you can't do BRT, but you can do an enhanced articulated bus, the buses that bend, that have more capacity than a regular bus. You can add some off-fare boarding. But when you do that comparison, they told us the numbers in front of you are what result. It's approximately 3 times more in terms of real estate value in Arlington and Fairfax, in jobs created, and in countywide revenues comparing the streetcar to the bus. And I want to emphasize too, these are county-wide revenues. The vast majority of this revenue will be what we use to actually fund some of the ongoing needs in our community, the school growth and other things. We need to generate revenue appropriately to be able to continue to expand and enhance our quality of life and meet the needs like the public schools need. Dennis, nothing else to add to that one? Okay, we'll go to the next one, which is really just another representation of what we just said, what I just spoke to. This is playing out that return on investment over the next 30 years. The top line being what is projected with the implementation of the streetcar on the timetable that it's proposed to be in place. And I know we've had some reinvestment already in Columbia Pike. Some people say, oh, look, it's going to happen anyway. Many of those businesses and buildings that have located there did so because they knew the streetcar was coming. And the investment that these economic consultants studied and have evidence of, it is enhanced when you have a fixed guideway rail system in the ground and a commitment made that it isn't going to move. A bus route can move at any time. So we feel this is just like the metro when it was built. The original plan was to put it down the center of I-66, a free right-of-way, and Arlington officials, against many opponents, fought very hard, educated folks, brought everyone into the dialogue, and paid a lot more money to put it underground under that deteriorating Roslyn-Ballston, that Wilson Boulevard corridor. Think of the return on investment and the places that we have created because of that bold and important decision decades ago. I see this as another important, bold, but very well thought out decision to ensure the return on investment and that we, in fact, create the places that we are looking to create and realize the vision that the community has coalesced around for the Columbia Pike corridor. Dennis?
These are really long-term community shaping investments. So this is not about 1 year, 5 years. These are investments for 30, 40, 50 years. And those investments pay off over time, and that's illustrated in this chart. And I will mention, by comparison, the investments that the county made in Metro Rail and the Orange Line corridor. The true payoff for places like Courthouse, Clarendon, Virginia Square took more than 20 years to fully play out. So we are talking about long-term strategic investments to position this community well in the region and nationally, not only for the next couple of years, but it really is for decades to come.
Okay, great. We only have a couple slides to go, and then we'll hear what some of your questions are. This slide is really just a prelude to the next one, reinforcing that, as I said at the beginning, we try to do a lot of our work in our business by creating partnerships. And this streetcar project has been a partnership between the County of Fairfax, Arlington, and the Department of Rail and Public Transit from the beginning. And the next slide will begin to talk about the funding. People are question and should and need to understand what the funding is, how we're going to build this streetcar line from Fairfax down to Crystal City. So we've divided into the two funding segments. They've always been separated. On the Columbia Pike segment, which is about 5 of the 7.5 miles, this is about 50% from state funds and about a quarter from regional funds. These are funds that came through the Governor McDonald's and the legislature's approval last year of transportation funding package, provided new funds. These are new funds that were not available a couple of years ago. And this is a portion of our portion of those regional funds that will be generated over the next year. The green segment is the commercial real estate tax. You know, each governor over the last several has tried to solve the transportation funding problem. Governor Warner tried with the regional sales tax referendum, which failed. Then Governor Kane put a package together, big success. It was challenged in court, and 2/3 of the funding sources were ruled unconstitutional, and we lost them. The one that we kept that was ruled constitutional was the commercial real estate tax, which is a surcharge on our commercial real estate in Arlington. Other localities have adopted it as well. These funds must, everything on this chart must be dedicated to transportation. It cannot be used for schools. It cannot be used for parks. It must be used for new transportation projects. So, and I'll say even in the new state grant and a good portion of that state funding, we would lose altogether in Arlington if we did not do the streetcar project because it's dedicated to rail. And if we didn't use it, nobody's going to pay less if we don't use it. It's just that the money's probably going to go to Tidewater, Norfolk, that is expanding their light rail system. The Crystal City segment, same 3 funding sources. And the only addition is that when Crystal City went through that dramatic base relocation and closure result, and Arlington lost 17,000 or so jobs countywide. Most of them came from Crystal City. This was in 2005, and it's been playing out ever since. We did a complete overhaul of the plan for Crystal City over 4 years, and we've adopted a new plan trying to provide incentives for the private sector to reinvest. Part of our commitment to Crystal City was this infrastructure fund, which is a small portion of the total here, but part of that infrastructure fund to fulfill that commitment and that plan is also going to support a portion of the Crystal City segment. So none of these funds come from general obligation bonds and personal homeowner taxes that pay off debt in Arlington GO bonds. They are all from these transportation-specific dollars. And that's part of our job. My job is to leverage these funds whenever possible. Dennis?
Just want to elaborate on one of the funding sources, which is the state contributions towards transit. Now we've gotten questions in terms of why is the state stepping up and investing even more on transit facilities here in Arlington. Arlington represents about 40% of the state's entire transit ridership on an average weekday. Even if you don't live here, you may be coming through here to get to work or to shop or to visit. So the state views Arlington as a very important transit hub. We have the highest ridership metro rail stations in Virginia, the highest ridership VRE station in Virginia, the highest percentage of bus ridership in Virginia. And so the state views us as an important partner for providing transit. The fact that this is viewed as a regional investment with Arlington working hand in hand with Fairfax County was viewed as very important. And the state has been a really reliable funding partner over the years, investing in our metro rail system, investing in VRE, helping us upgrade our local bus service, ART, and investing in this rail service in this corridor.
The only other thing I'll point out is that this total cost, infrastructure for transit, is expensive. A lot of transportation investment in the region is expensive. This cost, which is just under $500 million, compare that to, for example, one infill station that Alexandria is looking to put in, a metro station in Potomac Yard is close to $400 million. That's their estimated cost. So these investments are important, and you have to keep your eye as well on the fact that the funds being used to build it are dedicated to transportation, and there is a significant return on that investment, and we've had a history of that in Arlington. Finally, streetcar timeline. Dennis, just walk us through briefly this so that we can get to the questions.
Sure. We are dramatically increasing the pace of our work. This summer, we hired a program management team to assist both counties in managing the delivery of the streetcar program. We are looking to implement a contract award for engineering services to design the track, facilities, power system, and do vehicle specifications. Late in this year or early next year, the staff, with input from both the Arlington Board and the Fairfax Board, will select a way of delivering these projects, this program. The next major action is actually ordering the rail vehicles. That is a long lead time item. It takes some years to actually manufacture those. Construction is anticipated in or around the fall of 2017, and our target is to open the entire 7.4-mile system from Bailey's Crossroads Skyline to Potomac Yard, serving 2 metro stations in VRE in the spring of 2020.
Okay, and the last slide is just a picture of our website. A lot of information, a lot of FAQs. Anything you need to know should be here. Some downloadable information. In fact, this PowerPoint is, I believe, downloadable on the website. So please, as you have questions, use this as a reference point. Staff had put over time, keep it updated, try to keep it updated, and it's a very handy source of information. So with that, let me, what do I do now? Turn it over to Jennifer or somebody to let me know?
We're going to
I've
turn
got
it over
it.
to Jennifer. Wonderful.
Okay.
Great. We have a number of questions, so I'll start with one from Jim. Where exactly is the Skyline Terminal to be?
That is an excellent question. We are working with our consultants and with Fairfax County. There are a couple of different options. I think both jurisdictions, our goal is to get it across Route 7 to be able to serve the high-density mixed-use Skyline complex. We still have some details to work out, and that is going to be carried forward in the more detailed engineering work that we're going to do this fall. But our goal is there are 3 stations planned for Fairfax County. There's one in front of Goodwin House on Jefferson Street. There's a transfer center and what is currently the shopping center on Jefferson and approaching Route 7, and then with the terminus station being on the other side of Route 7 at Skyline.
And I think in short, there are 3 stations proposed in Fairfax, and very active and willing property owners at this terminus area that we're working with to sort of refine the actual decision.
Great, thanks. Question from Peter. What have we learned from traffic modeling about the likely impact on flow of having streetcar, buses, and cars all sharing Columbia Pike?
I'll turn to Dennis. The only thing I'll make a quick comment on that because Dennis can speak to the modeling part of the question. There are, when I've traveled around, and everything I know about streetcar is that it is a mode of transit designed to work in mixed traffic. It is in dedicated lanes in some places and in some stretches of segments and lines, but by definition around the world, streetcars often work effectively in traffic. And sometimes I hear about, what happens if a car gets stuck, broken. We've all seen that picture that's out there from Toronto, again, the most successful streetcar city in North America, expanding their system, huge ridership. And that, I assume, was with several streetcars backed up behind it. That may happen very infrequently, but there are protocols in place to move a car. Advanced towing is pretty quick around here, Move a car off a track very quickly, and to me, that is something that occurs when I've talked to people in Toronto and their elected leadership. It occurs very infrequently. So Dennis, on the modeling part.
We have done fairly intensive and ongoing traffic analysis, transit analysis on both corridors. We've also really dramatically expanded our data collection, so we now are positioning automated counters for the full length of the corridor in Arlington. What we see is that traffic is relatively stable on Columbia Pike, that we have been able to accommodate additional growth in trips by transit. The Columbia Pike numbers are pretty striking in terms of ridership growth. Accommodating shorter trips by walking as we improve pedestrian facilities. The investment in rail, in terms of our assessment, will actually ease congestion on Columbia Pike. It's moving more people in fewer vehicles in a more predictable way, and will build ridership. If we don't invest with the development that is coming to this corridor, we don't give people really good travel options, they will choose to drive. And we also see a dramatic difference in Columbia Pike, well, from Skyline to the Arlington portion of Columbia Pike to Pentagon City. Skyline, high density, relatively auto-dependent. The transit service is not very good. Columbia Pike, really high bus ridership, but the majority of trips are still made by auto, 63% of daily household trips. You get into Pentagon City right under 395 crossing Joy Street, there's a 20% drop in auto use, just going underneath 395. Our challenge on the Columbia Pike portion is to accommodate far more trip making, and particularly shorter trips by walking and transit than we have today. Challenge is a little different in Pentagon City and Crystal City. In Pentagon City, it's a major transfer hub, and we already have congestion with bus transferring to Metro Rail. And our goal is really to try to alleviate some of that congestion on Hayes Street. In Crystal City, the challenge is to really give people a great option to travel what is a very linear metro station area. The furthest housing developments and office developments are over a mile from the Metro Rail station. Give people a very predictable, high-quality ridership experience. So again, our plans are really to take traffic out of these corridors, car traffic, and replace it with more transit, more walking. And we've had success. We have looked intensively at our metro corridors, particularly the Orange Line, and what we find is that as we increase mixed use, better services, better sidewalks, more transit, the actual traffic volumes on our streets in our metro corridors has actually been dropping, not increasing. Very counterintuitive. Right. But if you look at the level of transit use, walking, and biking, it explains why that's happening.
One thing I've learned, and we can get to the next question, Dennis is the transit professional, but one thing I've certainly learned is that the reliability and the frequency of transit makes a huge difference, and that's why this is designed, the streetcar would be coming, correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, but every 6 minutes. It's a high frequency and reliability that will also add to its effectiveness.
Absolutely. One of the criticisms of some of the streetcar lines is that they are major infrastructure investments, and then those services are run every 15 minutes, which really doesn't provide that high quality transit service.
Right. Okay.
So,
next question.
Okay, let's move on. We have a number of questions in queue. Here's one from Catherine. With all the residential housing foreseen to be built along the Pike, what jobs do you see coming to the Pike specifically because of the streetcar?
I think initially we look to our economic development department for input on that. Columbia Pike is not an office environment today. I think there is opportunities based on economic development's input for some hotel development, smaller professional offices, a more diverse retail mix. Skyline, though, which is at the end of the corridor, is a major office center, and Pentagon City is a major office and retail center.
I think Dennis is right. I think we'll see some increase in retail and startups and small professional buildings along Columbia Pike. Again, it's a Main Street vision, but at each end you have huge office and commercial developments at Skyline and Pentagon City and Crystal City. Many of those workers will live along the Columbia Pike corridor and move to shop and entertainment. And again, as Dennis said, some tourism will probably come to the hotels that will be along this corridor. Go ahead, next.
Great, okay. We have a question from Thomas. How are the construction contracts going to be procured? What is the preferred construction delivery method? And design build, bid build, etc.
Okay, well, and I'll just say that is to be determined. In fact, the project management team that's in place that was brought on board several months ago, that is one of their primary tasks, is to give us recommendations on the preferred method of hiring or constructing this project, designing it as well, and sort of refined design.
We have, with our program management team, conducted interviews with major transit properties around the country to really document best practices for procuring and delivering light rail or streetcar facilities, and have really experienced incredible cooperation from agencies in Dallas and Denver and other places that are in fact delivering major transit infrastructure programs. And so we will be pulling all that information together, consolidating it down to a couple of options, and then ultimately making a choice about the best delivery option for Arlington and Fairfax.
So stay tuned. It is to be determined, and our goal is to do this in the most efficient, cost-effective, find ways if we can to reduce the overall cost and the timeline, very possibly to be determined, including a private, public-private partnership.
Great, thanks. Question here from Herschel. Did you look at larger buses that are available or are likely to be available when you need them?
We looked at all options for these corridors, and currently the conclusion of both Arlington and Fairfax is that an articulated bus option is an option that will not meet the needs of the development that is coming to these two corridors. And I should mention that in this region, we have experience with articulated buses, primarily in the District of Columbia, 16th Street corridor, Georgia Avenue corridor, and we see the limitations of those. Then we've gotten the next level of question, well, if not just the standard articulated bus, what about, you know, a double articulated bus? And we have responded to that as well. Very little experience in North America on those vehicles, and some real challenges in terms of operations. I should also mention we looked at the impact on infrastructure. Just putting larger buses alone creates some issues in terms of the corridor. As you go with heavier and longer vehicles, it will require reinforcement of the curbside lanes, of the travelways. Right now, we have issues today on Columbia Pike because of the level of bus traffic, and we are doing some reinforcement. But as you move into heavier and longer vehicles, the wear and tear on the road surfaces is considerable. We would probably be shifting to all concrete curbside lanes.
Okay, great. We have a question here from Luke. Are the Columbia Pike and Crystal City segments an all-or-nothing proposal, meaning nothing would be possible for one to be approved but not the other?
I think this has always been viewed as a integrated, seamless streetcar corridor, the 7.4 miles. I think if you don't connect Skyline with Crystal City, you lose a huge percentage of the value as you would with any transit vehicle. But to me, integrating the full 7.4 miles while always having two funding plans was always viewed as one integrated system. Dennis, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I would just say that we've looked intensively at the development plans, looked at the balance of housing and jobs and retail services. So Bailey's Crossroads, Skyline, very intense commercial center, retail services, and office. Columbia Pike, some of our highest density residential, not directly served by a metro rail line. You get into Pentagon City, our highest grossing retail district, incredibly important for Arlington. And then into Crystal City, another high-intensity office district where we're trying to add more residential. The value of connecting these places that have these different balances of housing, jobs, and retail services is more valuable than any one segment standing alone.
Okay.
Great. We have a question from Eric. In Crystal City, many residents are concerned about the exact route of the streetcar. Is the exact route set, or can the route be changed?
In the plans for Crystal City, there is a established proposed route, and it does, in one area, down in the heart of Crystal City, the streetcar goes on one road in one direction, and the other road in the reverse direction. I will say that multiple options were looked at when we chose that particular route, and that depending upon development patterns and when some of the existing buildings are either torn down or rebuilt, we may have to adjust between the long-term optimal route and an interim route that sort of has both lines on Crystal Drive, for example. So I think there's some flexibility here, and some of it will depend upon the phasing of redevelopment of some of the buildings in Crystal City. The plan, the Crystal City redevelopment plan, is a 40-year plan.
Great.
The Crystal City sector plan was a 5-year collaborative planning effort to reposition Crystal City, and transportation was integral to that replanning, rebuilding the street network, adding high-capacity transit. And it was through that process that we evaluated different options for routing rail through Crystal City to serve a revitalized district. So as Jay mentioned, it does have a one-way pair in the center of Crystal City. Upon completion of that sector plan, we then went ahead to complete the environmental documentation for Streetcar to refine the alignment, and that work is being wrapped up at present. But pretty much the alignment that was adopted by the county board as part of the Crystal City sector plan is the alignment that we are following through on. Okay.
Thank you. We have a question from Patricia. Can you please clarify the Crystal City Infrastructure Fund, one of the sources of Crystal City transit funding? Is any of it coming from non-commercial, non-state, or regional money?
The TIF, it's called a tax increment financing mechanism. Many localities do this as a way to contribute to a revitalization plan in an area. A TIF is essentially taking a portion of an increment, an increase in tax revenue. So it doesn't even kick in. If the revenue and real estate taxes goes down, the TIF revenue is zero. If the revenue goes up, let's say it goes up $100, some portion of that increase is dedicated to an infrastructure fund. And what we've done is create an infrastructure fund, the TIF, of 33% of the incremental increase of real estate revenue in Crystal City would be dedicated to infrastructure. Could be streetcar, could be other portions of the infrastructure. The source of funds is both commercial and residential, but the vast majority of it in Crystal City will be coming from the commercial sector.
The only thing I will add is that to date, most of the infrastructure work that has been completed using the tax increment financing mechanism is actually street and utility work. If you've been down in Crystal City, we have now completed the two-way conversion of Crystal Drive, upgraded the sidewalks, improved the lighting. We've rebuilt signals, added some pedestrian signals, and that work is ongoing.
And I'd say this is, to put it in a broader context, this is our compact and commitment to the residents and the businesses of Crystal City, as we're all dealing with the loss of jobs there, to the vision to revitalize and redevelop that neighborhood and our community, and that is a commitment we made when we adopted that plan. You don't make that investment unless you see a positive return on that investment. So all of it leads to, obviously, greater occupancy and more businesses being attracted to Crystal City in the end.
Great. We've got time for maybe just one or two more questions. Here's one from Elizabeth. What are the plans for bike pedestrian access, and that means secure bike parking facilities, for last mile access at streetcar stops?
Okay, I love that question as a cyclist. You know, Arlington is one of the most bicycle-friendly communities in America, and we have done so much with on-street bike lanes and requiring showering facilities and bike parking at all these buildings that we approve. There is so much that we've done that it applies everywhere. Capital Bike Share, what a wonderful addition to the options available to Arlingtonians, and that is now available throughout the Columbia Pike Corridor. A little plug for us. It was kind of our idea, and DC piggybacked on it, and now it is a regional system, and what a success. So, Dennis, just speak briefly to the specific question about Columbia Pike itself.
We specifically targeted the most recent expansion of Capital Bike Share to really provide better connectivity for Columbia Pike. So there are now stations generally on the Pike or within a block. We are working on a plan to add bike facilities, a lot of north-south bike facilities to connect Columbia Pike better up to the RV corridor. We have a program that we're also implementing to improve better east-west access. We have the Parallel Bike Boulevards project on 9th and 12th Street.
Along Columbia
Pike. We have plans to actually add shared use bike ped facilities basically from the east end of Columbia Pike through the Washington Boulevard interchange to connect all the way into Pentagon City.
I'm just going to, so you have a chance for one more question, I'm going to just say that I would love to see a bike lane on Columbia Pike, but we do not have the street width curb to curb, and most of us know Columbia Pike. You know what's there. You're not about to go down and rip out all those historic buildings. There was a citizen task force that went multiple years looking at the curb space requirements and what the travel lanes were going to look like and what we had room for. Whatever this streetcar, bus, none of these options allow for on-street bike lanes. Hence, we've created these bike boulevards, north and south of Columbia Pike, parallel roads that will direct the bike traffic to go on. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, great. Probably last question, and I'm sorry we won't be able to get to them all, but has the fare been set yet for the streetcar?
Dennis?
I think it is
Tanya asked that.
It is too early, I think, to give a definitive answer, but I think in all of our planning for the rail investments on Columbia Pike, Pentagon City, Crystal City, that we view the streetcar fare structure being consistent with our regional and local bus service, Metrobus and ART. It would be priced the same. We would have common fare media to allow for seamless transfer between bus and surface rail and Metro Rail.
I think it'd be hard to imagine that it isn't going to be the same as the existing fare structure. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here, yeah. I think that was probably our last question. We're at about 12:58.
Okay. All right, then. I'm going to say thanks to everybody and turn it over for the closing comments to Tara. Thanks.
Great. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a lot of great questions. For this being our first webinar, more than 100 people tuned in. The streetcar is an important strategic investment for our county. Just in the last week, Arlington was named one of the top 10 most livable places in the U.S., number 3 in the nation, ranked higher than any other jurisdiction in the D.C. metro area. And this didn't happen by accident. Our outstanding transportation network, strong neighborhoods, welcoming business climate, mixed-use development, and great schools were all factors in our ranking. A few months ago, Salon.com also talked about Arlington as a suburb of the future and said we have showed the path towards sustainable urban development. The streetcar is part of keeping Arlington the great place it is for generations to come. There will be many, many opportunities for the public participation as the streetcar moves forward. Please stay informed and stay involved. Thank you all.